why the N word with the hard R was actually a good thing. Now hear me out, I have an idea. I'm going to draw a parallel between ancient Greece and early modern to modern Europe, so we all understand. Basically, the ancient Greeks viewed the world in a way where they were the civilized core, and radiating outwards, people became less and less human. Right, you had the Greeks and their various city-states and their dialects that were civilized and they were normal people. Then you had neighboring populations such as Thracians, Phrygians, Celts that were barbaric, and foreigners. They had different languages. However, they also had some good qualities. They could have been great warriors, right? And some could have even been considered Greek had they married or changed culture. You also had other people out of the way, like Asians, Phoenicians, for example, that were civilized, cultured, however, were seen to have sort of a decadent, lesser quality to them, poor character. And then if you go all the way out, the Greeks would have been writing about people in the north and the poles, or way out in the south at the bottom of Africa, which they would call them monsters, right? They were myths, of course. So, just like the Greeks thought Greeks were normal, Western Catholic Europeans thought their neighbors were normal. Let's say you're French or you're Italian or you're German, you would have thought they were all just normal people. But if you go out and you compare their view of the Greeks and the Arabs, for example, they would have thought that Arabs and Greeks were very prosperous, they were wealthy, they were civilized, they had culture, they had great cities. However, they were heretics, or Muslims, which are basically heretics, right? They would have thought they were decadent and of poor character. Or, let's say, people from the Baltic, like Lithuanians, Poles, even Hungarians, that were very barbaric, but just as the Greeks Hellenized the Phrygians and the Thracians, the Hungarians and Poles were absorbed into the Western civilization. So they were very similar enough to be absorbed, right? So you see that as in the classical world, Hellenization allowed Christianity to spread because the people would have been viewed more similar over time, right? There's neither Jew nor Greek, that's the saying, So as the Europeans explored the world, they would have encountered people from Asia, East Asia, and black people from Africa. And what they did was they compared them, either comically or humorously, but they literally thought they were wild animals. These people were just so different from the people they knew. They literally thought they were monsters and animals, right? However, what changed? As they got, right, it's like the Greek myths. So but what changed is, as they got to know these people more, they started using different words for them. So instead of calling them monsters, they called them barbaric. That's where the N word comes in, right? If you call black people niggers, you don't call them a monkey. It's very different. That's a very different thing. And because what you do is you take a baseline. You think people are animals, but to call them niggers is to raise their humanity, right? You raise them from a non-human to a subhuman. So basically, as the people got more involved, as Christianity spread to the classical world, modern liberal humanistic values spread throughout the entire world, the modern world. So if you look at it, it's an actual good thing, because if that word would have never spread, the N word would have never spread, people would have never come to have seen each other as normal, right? because you raise their value. You don't devalue them. You devalue them relative to your family and to your people. But you actually upvalue them, right, to a subhuman status, which allowed for our modern values to spread, right? Right, because people are supposed to be equal under the Messiah God thing, right? And now people are equal under the law, right? People aren't supposed to be called niggers anymore because we're all the same, right? We don't call people that word. That's bad, because we're all the same. We're all equal under the good law. I hope you do. You understand what I'm saying? I just hope you understand what I'm saying.